America's at war.
Open your eyes, people. We're at war with flesh-eating worms.
That's right. The U.S. and Central America are trying to create a barrier to completely eradicate a type of worm/fly.
Yeah. So next time you see an IRS rep, say, thank you for killing the worms.
That's what your tax dollars at work. Fighting the war on worms. The worm war.
Worm war.
Anyway, so while you're giving money to the IRS, you can also give money to me. Buy tickets to my shows. This weekend, I'm in Oklahoma. Next weekend, I'm in Arizona. And the rest of the month is the Smoking Hot Life comedy tour with Shama Marema. We're in Virginia and Massachusetts. And then November, we've got some crazy fun tour dates. So I will probably be somewhere near you soon. Hopefully. That would be great. So.
This is a podcast. It's a comedy podcast. We're going to laugh a whole lot. And then maybe you're going to learn something about screwworms. So.
Yeah, like and subscribe and share it. And or if you hate it, just keep quiet. Don't tell
anybody. Except for the comments.
Don't tell anyone. Here's the episode.
Hey, man.
What's up?
Have you ever heard of the Great American Worm Wall?
The Great American what?
Worm Wall. The Great American Worm Wall.
Oh, that's what I thought you said. I thought you said worm wall. And I was like, there's no way I heard
Great
worm
American
wall.
Worm Wall. I don't know if that's what it's actually called. It's like, that's what it's
Is it a wall made of worms?
Called, kind of.
I don't want to do an episode about a wall of worms.
It's a metaphorical wall of worms. But it is a wall of worms.
Okay.
I think...
I miss when we had an intro. You know, we had music because we just go like, just roll it. You know,
I mean, we could.
we get a little bumper. You know, whatever.
Yeah. So this is.
You see what I'm saying? It's funny. You get it.
It helps
in comedy. There's a rule of 3. You have to do it 3.
The way we're going to understand the worm wall is if we start with understanding the worm.
Okay. I hate you for that. That was good. All right, let's understand the worm.
Okay, so there's a specific breed of worm called the screwworm. And the screwworm is called a screwworm because it kind of resembles a screw and because of its life cycle. So an adult screwworm looks like this fly. And this
is a worm?
This is an adult worm. So
I see.
They pupate into flies. The larva is the screw. Yeah, that's the word.
I know, but I don't like that you used it.
Okay. So they start out as worm, they pupate
into that.
But they're
I remember when I pupated. That's the word.
Yeah, you're right. It is the word.
See how dumb it is?
So their flies are fairly large flies. And they used to be like a lot in the United States. They used to be very, very common flies.
What's the deal with cicadas?
What do you mean?
They only come out every 7 years?
No, that's not true. They come out in force every 7 years. It's their election year.
I don't understand. That's what I'm saying. It's just like the freaking cicada Olympics. Like what's happening every 7 years? They're like...
Yeah, I don't know exactly. I don't know the science, but here's my shot at it. I think there's a few breeds, and I think there's certain breeds that come out every year. But then there's certain breeds that come out every 7 years.
What does that mean they come out? Where do they come from?
I think where do they go? They're in their caves.
Are they the McRib?
It's yeah.
McRib is back.
We're bringing them back.
Cicadas are back. I mean, this was the year that they're aggressive. I remember 2017 in Kansas City where it was like, oh my gosh, dude.
Yeah. I don't know. Why do cicadas come out?
Because you walk outside and you're just like, it's almost like a noise machine.
Yeah.
When you walk outside and you're like, I can't hear myself think right now. We don't have them in LA, by the way.
Oh, really? We didn't have them in Denver. It blew me away the first time I heard them. I love them. I'm not kidding. I genuinely
love sitting on your back porch and you love hearing that.
Yeah. I do. I really like the sound. Like it's relaxing.
I like that I can tell what year I was when I was a kid because I have those memories and I go, that was 2003.
Because because
the cicadas were out.
Well, they're out every year. That's just how much are out.
No, you can tell when they're out.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like sometimes it's louder. Like yesterday, actually, I walked back in the house and I told Brie, I was like, the cicadas are louder today than they've been all year. Because this year was supposed to be a big year for them, but here it hasn't been very big. Like it's been big south of us, But here, it's been pretty
it's been
average.
Hot.
Yeah,
It's usually the worst in August and September, like through the fall.
interesting.
Yeah.
So
Because I remember, anyway, go ahead.
basically what this says is that they hatch every 17 years, and it's because of predators.
They
And
hatch every 17 years. So they lay an egg.
13. There's some of them are 13, some of them are 17.
So they...
And so but the brood will hatch. And so that brood will hatch and a bunch of them
Where do
will
they lay
come
their
out.
eggs? Where are they at?
I don't know where they're. I'm
Why can't we
guessing
just
in the
kill
dirt. But I think what
They're in the
happens...
dirt for 17 years?
Yeah, and then they come out. And I think it's to avoid predators because they're like, if we're only out once every 17 years, it's harder
They
for them
can't
to
get
us. I don't know. But it says brood. So my guess is that they've pinpointed all the broods. And so it's every
What does
seven-ish
a brood
years.
look like?
A brood's just like a pile of eggs.
That's what I'm saying. What does cicada eggs look like?
I have no idea. Well, that's not what
If only.
That's not what the episode's about. I didn't research this.
Okay.
Well,
Okay,
all I'm saying
so-
is I do like the sound. It's quaint to me. It reminds me of summer. It feels like summer. The sound feels like summer to me.
To me.
And it's nice. I like sitting on the
You
back
should
porch,
sample it and make a summer
listening
song.
to the cicadas, drinking my sweet tea, researching cicada 3301,
Yeah.
and trying to figure out the mystery.
That was pre-video.
Wow. That's crazy. Okay. So screwworms. That is an adult screwworm. It's a fly.
Yeah.
What the fly
Show
is,
me this fly's cub.
so what they do is they're native to like South America. Over the course of time, they've migrated into the Americas.
Okay.
And so they were really, really popular in North America for a long time.
Right.
The way that their life cycle goes is an adult screwworm will go and lay her eggs. Where she lays her eggs is in the wound of an animal, the open wound of a live animal. It goes and finds an open wound, drops a bunch of eggs in there. Those eggs hatch. You're going to like this part. Buckle
Those
up.
eggs hatch and
Buckle
then
up.
they
It's going to be,
eat the flesh.
So
of
the
that
eggs
wound.
hatch and then they burrow in and they eat the flesh. They look like screws. And so they screw in and they eat the flesh and they eat all the flesh around to get to all the nutrients that they need. Once they grow large enough, then they drop out of the body, dig into the dirt, pupate, come out a full grown fly.
Pupate.
Yeah. And so obviously this is not healthy for animals. It happened when these were popular. A very common place that they burrowed was in deer, because deer, they would get in their fights with their horns, get wounds, and then they would burrow into the deer. So that was really popular.
Home sweet home.
Another thing that was really popular was livestock.
Right.
Livestock was
Which creates
constantly getting
problems
infected.
For us.
Yeah. And then also people. Sometimes it did happen to people. It was pretty rare, but it did happen to
I
people.
would just cut my whole arm off.
Yeah. And it's dangerous because obviously it's a flesh-eating parasite.
Right.
So that's not good. But it also it leads to infections and all sorts of other health concerns. So it's not a good thing. The estimate is that in the early 50s, this was costing the United States $750 million a year, United States farmers, because it was killing cattle and or making that cattle not sellable when they killed it or took I think if they got infected too, they couldn't milk it because it was not safe for human consumption. So the USDA was like, this is the major problem. We need to come up with a solution for this. And so they started working on this. And wait, this is actually the 30s.
Oh, well, wait. And actually, wait.
No, I said 50s, but this was the 30s because there was a scientist by the name of Knipling, Edward F. Knipling.
Okay.
I'm going to be honest with you. I read that and I'm pretty confident it's Nippling.
Yeah.
But every video I've read or listened to, the guy calls him, the narrator calls him Knipling. So I'm going to say that too to fit in with the crowd, but I'm pretty sure they're all wrong and it's Nippling because the K is silent in a word like that usually. There's no vowel after. It's just KN.
I don't know, Cano.
Edward F. Nippling. He was a USDA entomologist in the 30s, and he was tasked with figuring out this problem.
Right.
One thing he realized in his studies was the screwworm only mated once, and then it would never mate again for the rest of its life. That was its one shot at reproduction. And so he said, the fly. And And so they said if there was a way we could...
What, they call the fly the screwworm still?
I actually am not sure once it becomes a fly if they actually call it, if they change the name. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, maybe, probably. Screw fly. So the screw fly, he said, if there was a way for us to sterilize these flies en masse, then they would basically mate themselves out of existence because they only mate once. And so if one side of that was sterile, then they wouldn't be able to reproduce anymore.
Right.
And so he started researching ways to sterilize flies. And
it's a complicated surgery. It's a little snip, snip.
And so the problem with that, though, was this was the 30s, and then the war happened. And so he went off to the war and had to do the war thing for a little bit. And then the war ended. The war ended, and the war inspired him because at the end of the war, something happened, the atomic bomb. And he was like,
we just bomb these flies.
He's like, why don't we just drop a bomb on them?
Have you thought about nuking the flies?
Have we thought about nuking them? No, he was like, wait a second. Well, I shouldn't say he said, wait a second.
Radiation.
What happened is they saw the effect of everyone who survived the bomb. And then he was like, wait, radiation might be our solution. And so what he did is he got a friend who had an x-ray machine. I shouldn't say friend, probably a colleague that had a lab with an x-ray in it. It wasn't just like his neighbor.
Why don't you come over to my house? I got an x-ray machine in my basement. It's right next to the poker table. And on Thursdays, we do pool night. If you're a fan of billiards, you can come on over. And my wife will cook us some. I don't know. She's been on a Amish bread kick lately, so we might eat some of that.
Yeah.
And
but if you're busy Thursdays, on Fridays we do X-rays. We figure out what your bones look like. Want to know what your bones look like?
Just slamming beers and going.
Whoa!
It got less fun when we saw that tumor.
Yeah, that was a pretty disappointing guy's night. Yeah, so we just put Gary down right then and there.
We made him walk. We just told him to walk and not stop.
Yeah, we flushed him down the toilet. We told his wife he went to the farm.
Okay.
So he found his friend who's got an x-ray machine.
All right.
And Knipling and his friend, they start taking flies.
I hate when I go to the dentist and they put that heavy blanket on you. Oh, gosh.
Yeah, that's a...
I always thought they were going to shoot me. I always thought they were going to put it on me and they're going to be like...
not bulletproof yet.
Gotta
add a layer. So they start taking flies and sitting them down in the x-ray machine and x-raying them.
Catching with chopsticks, just...
Yeah. And then they start testing them to see if they're sterile. And so after a while, they figure out it takes 5 passes through the x-ray machine to sterilize a fly. And so like, we've got our solution.
How many passes through a machine does it take to sterilize a human?
I mean, probably a lot more than 5. Because, I mean, flies are way smaller than us.
I wonder how often I fly. You know?
Oh, yeah.
You think
I think the radiation there is probably a lot less than these machines.
I hope.
Because if you think about it, if you get an x-ray at the doctor's office, you're wearing that. They make you wear those vests and stuff.
That's for their protection. Yeah, it's for your protection. There's a lot of radiation.
Yeah, I think the x-rays at the airport are just
pretty
such
crazy
a low
that we
level.
haven't figured out something else, though, you know?
To x-ray you?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's kind of crazy.
I think it is.
Because it's light.
I understand what it is. I'm just saying I feel like we're at a point where science could probably figure out how to do it with less radiation.
It did, though. It's x-rays.
Right. But I'm saying they could keep progress. I feel like they just stopped.
I'm having a hard time with this.
I'm saying...
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I just don't understand why. I think that's the thing is like there's not a reason to... We got it. We figured it out.
No, we're still getting radiation every time we do it.
Yeah, but it's such a small amount. It's the same amount that you get just from breathing outside.
Yeah, and I think we should fix that too.
I mean, yeah, I guess maybe we can try to be less
it was the same thing. It's like, are you still eating microplastics? Yeah, none of us should be eating microplastics. That's kind of the whole point. That's what I'm saying. I become radicalized where we should probably fix all these problems.
I saw a meme and it was like, my grandpa, body full of lead, my dad, body full of asbestos, me, body full of microplastics. And it's like, they're all like doing that arm thing, holding together.
We're all in this together, baby.
Anyways, so they basically figured out the dosage of radiation to give a fly to sterilize them. And so then he writes a paper and puts it out and is like, hey, we need, I don't know, a few $1 million to breed a giant group of flies, sterilize them, and then release them to the wild to eradicate this thing. And it was pretty widely criticized. There was a quote, I don't know if we could say this, but I'm going to say it, and then maybe, Alex, you decide if we should censor this or not. It was a quote. It was, quote, idiotic insect sex scheme, was what the critics were calling this.
Oh.
Because they were just going to sterilize a bunch of them and make them mate.
Which word did you think we couldn't say in that?
Idiotic. They were going to sterilize them out of existence. Right. People thought it was a bad idea. People were like, they're like, you're going to dump a bunch of these into the world and expect that to work. And so...
Did they do this with mosquitoes as well? I'm pretty sure I think I sent this to you.
They might have, because this was...
I think we talked about this on our Discord with remember the Patreon hangout thing? Where we talked about how they were trying to get rid of mosquitoes in California?
Maybe.
I think this is what they did.
Interesting.
Yeah. Anyway.
Hey, if you've been watching for a minute and you like this show, a great way to help out is by becoming a Patreon supporters. Our patrons get a ton of perks for their support. They get ad-free episodes a week early. They get a Discord with our hosts and producers. We do monthly hangouts. There's a way to get birthday messages on your birthday. There's a lot of great perks, but more than anything, you just help make sure that this show continues to happen forever. We never want to stop. We're going to keep doing this forever. If we have enough patron supporters, we can put our brains in those little vats and like have AI pretend it's us. And so like we can keep doing it long after we die. But that only happens if you support us on Patreon. So we appreciate your support. Thanks for your help. If you don't want to support, that's totally fine. Thanks for being here. We really appreciate you watching this show. He's campaigning for it. Some people think it's a bad idea. Did you say certain people?
They don't want us all to have kids.
There's a lot of people who think it's a bad idea, but he is eventually able to secure some funding for a test run in Florida. And so they put together... or in, not Florida, Curacao? Is that how you say that? The island nation, Curacao?
How did you get Florida from that?
Well,
how did you go? Not Florida.
It's later in the story.
Caruso.
I jumped the story. So Curacao. That's how you pronounce it?
Curacao?
I don't know.
I don't
Alex,
know.
how's it?
Where are we talking?
It's an island nation in the Caribbean. That has a bunch of
the Caribbean.
That has a bunch of screwworms in it, but it's a smaller island nation. So like, it's small enough we could actually pull this off. So they make a bunch of flies,
and you were like, "That's Florida."
This happened. Okay,
they finally got some support for Florida. I mean, gosh, somewhere in the Caribbean.
So what they did is
same thing.
They put together a few million flies,
right,
and then they radiated them all. And so they'd be sterilized. And then they cooled them down so they would basically be in like a cryogenic sleep. And then they put these cooled boxes into a plane and they flew over the island and they had a guy in the plane dump the boxes. And so that way all the flies would fall out of the boxes. And then the fall, they would hit normal temperature and they'd wake up falling from the airplane, go down to the island, go down to the island, and then mate with all of...
oh, shoot, I gotta mate right now.
with all of the flies on the island.
I had a near-death experience, baby. Once you wake up falling out of a plane, you just realize life's too short.
Just puts things in perspective. And
I need to become a family man now.
And then, the story played out. So here's a shot from that test of him inspecting some fly boxes.
What year is this?
This is in 51 when they did this initial test. And so they flew over and they did it and it worked. Within a few months of running these tests, the fly was completely eradicated from the island.
Okay. And so imagine you go down there to count the flies, right? You're like, okay, let's see if we can. And you spend like a whole week and you're like, I haven't seen a single fly. We did it.
Yeah.
We did it.
Yeah.
And you get back to the airport. You're getting ready to fly back. You get in the little plane. They're doing the run up, doing the pre-check stuff. And then in your plane is just
Yeah.
One little fly that you're like,
Fly back over
oh,
and
crap.
pop up again. Yeah. We're going to hit him again.
We're going to have to nuke this place.
We're going to have to bomb this island. And so the test goes swimmingly. No more screwworms here, right?
Sometimes I just look at the camera and I go, you guys hear him, right? You guys hearing this? Swimmingly? What the heck? Where's your pipe? Oh, the test goes swimmingly. Idiot. I've just sit through this.
And so
And that's Celsius. Something's popping my neck right now. Did you change hats?
Celsius, live fit, pop your neck.
Did you change your hat?
I did change my hat.
To make it seem like a different episode? I have
same
a completely different shirt I meant to change into.
I have the same shirt on, different hat. Same shirt, same hat. Different hat. Different hat, same shirt.
Okay.
Same crap. So
my manager says we need to post more about them. That's why I'm going to post a picture and just caption it. My manager says I have to post this. My manager keeps threatening me.
So the Florida Cattlemen's Association hears about this test.
Sure.
And they were like, hey, all of our cattle are dying from these screwworms. And they're like, can you please do this here? And so they started campaigning the
Florida
USDA.
Cattlemen.
Yeah. They started.
You sure?
Yes, I'm positive. I jumped ahead in the story earlier. Okay, fine. So they campaigned the USDA. The USDA took them a few years, but in 1957, they're like, fine, we'll do it for you. And so they do a campaign to do this in Florida. And they work their way up and they basically create a line. And so they're pushing the border of screwworms from the Keys all the way up to the Panhandle and out of Florida. And it works. They, in a matter of a couple of years, eradicate the screwworm from Florida.
Wow.
And so the USDA is like, this is great. And so they keep pushing that line. And so they push it up to the south, push it across the west, and they end up getting the entire continental United States eradicated. The problem is they have to maintain this eradication because there's still screwworms in Mexico.
Right.
And so what they're doing at the time is they are flying over the entire Mexican border and they're dumping 200 million sterile flies a week on the border to keep these flies from mating and then
you know what that looks like if you just see like jeez.
And so this is
become. But how are they getting the flies that they're sterilizing?
Oh, they've got a plant. They're farming flies. And so they've got a whole like internal ranch, an indoor ranch of
where
flies.
They're having them mate.
Yeah. And then they're
pubating them.
Yeah. So they have non-sterile flies that they're using to create, and then the ones that they're creating, they're sterilizing and then dropping them out of the plane.
Science could get rid of mosquitoes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, the benefit is I don't know about mosquitoes. I don't know how many times mosquitoes mate in their life. The benefit of these is they mate once and then you're done.
Right.
So the United States is like, hey, I think
spiders.
we're spending more money than we need to be spending on this. The U.S.-Mexico border is really big. Mexico's got that spot in the middle of Mexico that's pretty thin. And so they call up Mexico and they're like, hey, you guys know these screwworms? And they're like, yeah, screw those worms. They're like... They're like, hey, what if...
At least you didn't do what I thought you were going to do. This
They're like, what if we work together to get rid of them in Mexico? And they're like, what's the catch? And they're like, it's just cheaper for us because it's thinner there. And so we have a thinner border to run. And they're like, okay, cool. And he's like, and the U.S. was like, okay, let's do some math. How many cattle do you have on the north side of Mexico? And they're like, how much cattle do we have? And so they basically figured out, we're going to split the cost based on how much cows we're saving.
Sure.
And so the U.S. was going to pay 80%, Mexico was going to pay 20%, and they moved the border down to that halfway point in Mexico where it's pretty thin.
Right.
And so they ran that into the 80s, doing the same thing, dumping flies, less than they were before, but still dumping a lot of flies every single week. And then over time, Mexico was like, hey, but wait, we've got like more country down there. Like, can't we just do this further down? And so year on year, it starts becoming a thing where Mexico and the United States are calling every country further down the Central America and just be like, hey, you guys want to get rid of those flies? And then they're all starting to pour into this budget and moving that border down. And over the course of the 1900s, that line just keeps getting moved down and moved down and moved down and moved down until eventually it has reached the Isthmus of Panama. And it hit that point in 2001. And so that's our barrier right now. There's a point in the middle of Panama where we're doing this, and we do this to this day. There's an organization there called COPEG, which, first of all, COPEG has probably the coolest logo out of any government organization.
Pretty stinking
Pretty
sick. Pretty sick.
It's just a fly and a radiation symbol because we're radiating those flies out of existence.
Yeah. No pubating here.
No pubating here. Okay. I just realized something, but I'm going to save it for the after the fiddle.
Okay. I thought you pulled a Mitch McConnell.
And so now COPEG, in 2001, they built this big facility, and this is their farm where they are creating all these flies.
This is a prison for flies.
Yeah, this is probably fly prison. And they are...
all it takes is 2 of them to get out, though. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, but there is a ground game here, and we'll talk about that in a second. A what?
A ground game. They know that you can't defeat a species like this just with the air attack. You got to go on the ground too.
Yeah, and you got to use mental warfare. They convinced some of the flies that there were vampires in their area.
Yeah. Watch out. So
the CIA did that. That's actually something the CIA tried to do. Is they convinced.
Yeah, we talked about that in an episode, right?
MK
what
Ultra.
episode was that?
MK Ultra.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
We'll link it somewhere. It'd be cool if you could click that on the screen or something.
Yeah, we're not going to do that. Alex put a note in, so I actually do it.
Hey, Alex, would you please take a note of that so that maybe we can remember to do that? Do you see how I talk to him like a person and you talk to him like an AI assistant?
He is an AI, right?
Alex, take a note of that.
So they...
No, that's not the right way to do it. Oh, certainly. Sorry.
So that...
I tell you, I was looking up something. It was about our episodes. I was trying to create some threads or content for the stuff, and it got one of the facts wrong.
Okay.
About one of the stories, and I said, no, this is the real one. And it goes, oh, you're right. And then it gave me the post again with the real facts, and I was like, did you just say that because I told you it was wrong, or was I actually right about that? And he goes, no, you were right about that. And I was like, I don't trust this at all.
Interesting. Interesting. So COPEG is here, and they are producing inside that factory. These things have like a 6-day lifespan, so they don't live very long.
Yeah.
But every week they're producing around 20 million screwworms, and then they're radiating them. And 4 days a week they take a flight with a little over 2 million of them, and they have a rigged plane. So this is them loading up,
flying the cockpit, and then one of the things just accidentally opens, and all of a sudden there's just freaking
flying everywhere,
flies flying all over. You're
Gosh,
like, frick.
That would be such a nightmare. And so what they do is they take a flight. There's a tech who mans the bomb bay doors, and then there's the pilot. And the tech opens up the doors, and they fly over the Isthmus of Panama, and it's quite literally a wall. They spend 4 hours flying back and forth, just slowly dropping these like rhythmically, to make sure that they really do create a wall of these worms to stop them from being able to mate past that line. And then what they do with what's left over is they kind of have like a strategic reserve.
Where are they getting money for this?
The United States, the USDA is paying for this.
Wow.
Well, I mean, I shouldn't
4
say
flights a week.
I shouldn't say just the USDA. It's like this whole North American consortium of nations. It's like, we don't want this in our country.
Sure.
And so,
So,
but yes,
what you're saying is
we're paying for it.
They, to keep the flies out, build the wall.
Pretty much. It's a worm wall.
It's a worm wall.
It's a worm wall. And so they're dropping a little over 2 million of these flies
every couple
over
days.
Panama every couple days. And here's
you
the thing.
grow up next to the wall, next to that area, and you see the plane coming. Oh yeah, they come to drop all the flies.
The Atlantic has an article for this, and I'm going to pull this real quick. I didn't pull this originally, but I am going to. They did like a rendering of this for the article.
Okay.
And I think it's beautiful, honestly. This is the Atlantic's rendering of what that would look like.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit more organized than it probably is, but they...
Yeah, I don't think they're trained to fly in formation like that.
Well, what's interesting is because they basically freeze them, and so when they hit the air, they thaw and then they wake up. So they're knocked out halfway through that flight, and then they wake up, and I'm sure they lose their minds and they like start flying really crazy. So if you were watching that, you'd see them about halfway just falling, and then all of a sudden they wake up and they start probably being pretty erratic on the way down.
There's gotta be videos of this.
I haven't seen any videos like of it happening. Maybe, but I didn't come across any. And so, but here's the thing: they're producing 20 million a week. They're only dropping 8 to 10 million a week, and they don't live long. And so the question is, what are they doing with the other 20 million? Well, a portion of that goes back into the breeding to keep the population alive.
Right.
Their sterile population alive, and then a portion of them they freeze and they put away for a rainy day, because sometimes these outbreaks happen. So the Florida Keys in the early 2000s had an outbreak of screwworms because there are some nations in the Caribbean, and then South America especially is not part of this. They're still there. And so there are occasions where things get shipped from South America, or they somehow make the jump from Cuba to the Keys, and there's a outburst. What's the word I'm looking for? Outbreak. An outbreak of the screwworms, and so they have to do something about it. And so then they wake up their frozen soldiers, their sterile frozen soldiers.
Come on, little Waltz.
And then they fly over. They drop the worms in that.
You think we figured out how to unfreeze Walt Disney's brain yet?
That's not actually there.
You don't think so?
That's not actually there.
You're right. I signed some terms and conditions.
Terms and conditions. That's not actually there.
Well, I was interested because they're doing a new animatronic in Disneyland.
Yeah.
Where Mr. Lincoln is. You have like an afternoon, like an encounter with Mr. Lincoln.
Yeah.
It's an animatronic of Abe Lincoln and all that stuff. They're putting in a showing of an animatronic of Walt.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to be an animatronic.
You think it's going to be him?
I think they're bringing him back.
You think they're putting his brain in a
wouldn't
robot?
that be the coolest comeback of 2025 if Disney was like, hey, by the way, here's Disney?
That would be pretty cool.
I think we'll be alive when it happens.
I doubt that's real, but I guess there's a chance. I guess anything's possible, but I doubt that's possible.
This is your little unbelief thing happening right now, isn't it? That's your little, oh, okay. Oh, you know what? You're right. Sure. You're right to be skeptical about that. I should do some source criticism.
Why would they do that? Why would they be like, oh, the founder of our company died.
This episode's going swimmingly.
Let's cut his head off and freeze it and bury it. Why? Who does that? Who says my boss just died? I'm going to cut his head off and freeze it and bury him.
People whose boss told him to do that before he died, dude.
Yeah.
People whose boss was like, I'm going to create a village where people never have to leave, all right? And like, honestly, we're never going to let them leave. And then when he dies, they're like, oh, shoot, I guess we'll just turn this in one of the other parks and call it Epcot. But the original idea was pretty freaking terrifying.
Yeah.
We have an episode about that too. It's linked somewhere. Alex, write it down.
Hey, you know what?
Your show sucks, dude.
You just seem so stressed right now. Here's
It's the energy drink,
Here's the thing. This isn't a sponsored segment, but I tried this thing yesterday. This is not sponsored.
Yeah, I hope not.
Yeah, but
I hope that whatever you're about to say wasn't like, hey, bring this up about your controversial Disney bit.
Have you ever heard?
There you go. Dadgummit.
Have you ever heard of odd job hats?
Ow, I have the hiccups. Ow. Ow.
Should I have drank? What did you do? 2 Celsius? You can't do 2 Celsius. That's gonna get you with the hiccups.
That's my third for the day.
Are you good? Oh, thinking about that's gonna give me the hiccups. Are you good? Can we proceed?
I think so.
Okay, so I.
Dang it! No, I brought it back.
No, okay. So here's the thing. Yesterday I bought an ad. I fell for an ad, and it was the Rise app. Have you ever heard of this?
Does it help you wake up in the morning?
Kinda. It's a sleep app. It is a sleep app, but I don't think it's. I mean, I guess that's part of it. The concept is like you take a quiz and then you connect your Apple Health data, and it takes both of those to like deduce your peak melatonin production. And so then what it says is if you go to sleep during that peak production, you'll sleep through the night and you're going to wake up at the time that you need to wake up. Or that like your desired.
What time does it say your
time.
bedtime is?
So mine said between 10:48 and 11:15. That was the window. And it says everyone's somewhere between a 30-minute and an hour-long window where you're at the peak production. If you go to sleep during that, then you're going to have the best sleep ever. And I'll be honest, could be placebo. But first night, honestly, one of the best sleeps I've had in like months. And I did. It said wake up at 6 a.m. is what it told me. It said go to bed here, wake up here. And I actually woke up 5:59 on my own before my alarm woke up, and I went off.
So I
didn't wake up at all through the night, and I feel great today.
I have noticed that your body has like an internal alarm clock.
Yeah. Your circadian rhythm. And
well, I'm saying like if you set an alarm for 6:30, your body will at 6:25 wake up.
Yeah. Your body knows.
It's really hard to do a podcast with the hiccups. I'm getting really frustrated over here, but I'm doing my best.
Just stop hiccuping. Just stop it.
I was even thinking like, okay, I'm going to try to intentionally hiccup into the microphone, and that'll make it not happen. And then it happened, so that sucks. Here we go. I'm going to really.
Yeah, Alex, you can just edit it out. Edit out his hiccups. Censor them. Bleep them every time he hiccups. But anyways, what I'm saying is you should try it. It's pretty cool. And it also tells you where your energy is throughout the day. So based on like your sleep, it's like, here's your peak energy time. So it's like, do all your important tasks
there
here.
It is.
Because your energy is going to be the highest right there. It's pretty cool. It's a good app. But anyways, we're not sponsored. And if we were, we probably wouldn't talk about them while Jared has the hiccups.
I'm trying so hard to get rid of them.
Yeah, I can tell you are. Anyways, just keep hiccuping over there. I'll talk about Copeg a little more. So they had this outbreak in the Florida Keys in the early 2000s. You're falling apart.
I'm trying so hard not to hiccup, and it's really ticking me off, bro.
Hold your breath. Hold your breath.
Pause it. Let me walk. Oh my gosh. Hey, thanks for checking out this episode. Wanted to let you know real quick, we have an email list, and it's not like hey, we're going to send you our merch and new episodes all the time. We actually give you updates on these stories as we find out about them. So a lot of our episodes we've done a couple years ago now have updates, or the person the topic was about passed away or was caught by the police, or whatever updates we can find on episodes that we've done. We want to let you know about it so that our episodes just aren't, out there out of date. It's a really fun way to keep learning new information. And then every once in a while, we let you know about new events coming up or new episodes. And it's just a way to help us keep spreading this show. Join that email list. You can text TILLN to 66866, or there's a link in the description of this episode, or you can just go to TILLN.com. It's very easy to join this email list. It's everywhere. It's actually really hard to not join it.
So in the early 2000s, they popped back up in the Florida Keys.
Right.
And they took that extra surplus that they had and flew over and dropped them and re-eradicated them. And this happens every so often where throughout Central America, North America, the Caribbean, where there will be these little outbreaks, and they'll fly over, re-eradicate them to keep the screwworms out of our lives.
Okay.
But this isn't, the worm wall by itself isn't quite enough. You need the ground game. I mentioned that earlier. So there's actually a group of people in Panama that work for Copeg that travel around that area in Panama, the Isthmus of Panama. And they
set little traps.
Well, what they do is they travel around by horse, boat, and motorcycle. And they go from farm to farm. And depending on your risk area, your like risk rating, they come either every month, every 4 months, or once a year. And they swing in and they inspect your farm, inspect all your animals. And if you have any animals with wounds, they have this like special paint that they paint on the wound, and that paint will kill the screwworms. And so this is kind of like their extra layer of defense to make sure, like, if the wall from the sky isn't working, we're gonna do this.
If the firmament isn't working.
then we're gonna do this extra thing to
The dome.
The dome, yeah, the iron dome. If that's not working, then we will eradicate them this way. So at the end of the day, the USDA spends $15 million a year on this project.
That's you and I. We pay for that.
Yeah, we
with
pay
our tax dollars.
with their what?
Our tax dollars.
Our tax dollars. Dropping bombs, basically, of worms every single week, somewhere in the ballpark of 8 to 15 million worms in Panama every single week. Don't look at me like that. You're going to give him back. You're going to give him to yourself. Stop. To make the worms mate so that way the worms can't kill our cows. But they estimate that today this saves the United States $1.3 billion a year.
Oh, for sure.
And so the 15 million is totally worth it. And it also makes...
that's the problem with a lot of people who are like, I want my tax dollars to go to this stuff. And it's like, you're not understanding what it would cost for us not to have this in place.
Yeah. There's certain things where it's like, the cost is, it does it.
Yeah.
It's like, 15 million, easy. I would pay that every day if it means I'm saving 1.3 billion. And I say that as if I could do that.
Pay extra money for first class because I don't want to sit next to the poors. You know what I'm saying? The experience of sitting next to a poor person costs me more than the money that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's kind of like at Texas Roadhouse. I pay extra for the loaded baked potato because I don't want the experience of eating a baked potato with nothing in it.
And I pay extra to not sit next to someone who goes to Texas Roadhouse. Do you know what I mean?
You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean by that? There is... Never mind. Never mind.
Are you poor? Stay away from me.
Yeah, so that is the great North American worm wall. It protects us from what's honestly kind of the nastiest worm I've ever heard of. Because this could burrow into you if
why are you fear mongering at the end here? This could get you. This could get you. You know when your kid scrapes their knee, this could get them.
This could get your kid. But we give the USDA $15 million a year in our tax revenues to make sure that can't happen. So next time you see an IRS,
$12 million a year.
Next time you see an IRS employee, thank them for killing the screwworms.
Thanks for killing those worms.
Can you imagine?
Thanks for killing the worms.
Can you imagine getting audited and they show up at your house?
I hope that this comes up in the next presidential debate. Hey, I don't really have a question. I just really want to say thank you for your service in killing the worms.
Thanks for killing the worms. Excuse me?
I thought that's what the wall was.
I thought that's what you were talking about. The wall, right? The worm wall? Yeah. So it's not a physical wall of worms. It's kind of like a metaphysical wall of worms, but it is physical at the same time. You know what I'm saying?
Worms.
I think it would be sweet if we did make a wall out of worms, but that's not what we're doing here.
Because imagine, when do they freeze them?
Pretty quickly. So like they pubate. So what's actually kind of nasty is in this facility here, they kind of have their breeding ground, and then the worms they put the eggs in some meat. So they get like beef and stuff, and they put them in there. They grow, and then they pubate. And throughout the facility, they have to set the temperature at different temperatures. So like in that room, it's 102 degrees to simulate the temperature of a body that they've infected. And then
there's just meat sitting at 102.
Yeah. Apparently it smells really bad in there.
Oh, you don't say.
And then they go and then they move them to a new room where then they radiate them. And so it's like the radiation chambers.
So imagine, to these flies, this is their alien encounter.
Yeah.
You know, like, I got put in some weird room with a bright light. And the next thing I knew, I was falling asleep. And then when I woke up, I was falling from the sky.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. It is a crazy day for them, for sure.
I was just trying to pubate, dude.
I was just trying to pubate. Next thing I know, I'm falling from an airplane, half frozen.
I wish we still had an intro so we could have us saying, just trying to pubate, you know?
Trying to pubate. Just throw it in the beginning. No context. So that's the Great American Worm Wall. Is thank the IRS next time you see them. Thanks for killing the worms. It's a very important thing. A little funny.
Thank you for killing the worms. Instead of thank you for being a friend.
Yeah, it's a great.
Thank you for killing the worms.
Cool. Good point to fiddle off. Fiddle it off.
Hey, thanks for checking out that episode of Things I Learned Last Night. And speaking of governments versus wildlife, we have an episode about the Great Emu War. Again, one of my favorite episodes. The Australian government was trying to defeat an infestation of emus. Turns out emus are pretty smart and outsmarted military maneuvers. Pretty wild stuff. So if you can't wait for another episode, go watch some old ones, or you can watch next week's episode right now by joining us on Patreon. You get next week's episode right now, ad-free. That's audio and video, whichever way you want to watch that or consume that media, whatever that is. However, you also get access to our Discord immediately, so you get to chat with us and hang out there. Thank you so much for supporting our show. It really does mean a lot that you are here for these episodes. So we'll see you next week on Things I Learned Last Night.